clipped into touch, and Leinster go through. The URC semi-final curse is broken. Leinster head to their first final. The first Northern Hemisphere grand final in the URC. Croke Park in Dublin will host next Saturday as Leinster look to break their trophy duck that has lasted 4 years. The holders have fallen in Dublin as the rain pours down. But Leinster dominant from start to finish. There were a few late scores from Glasgow that put a degree of respectability about it, but in truth, there was only one team in it. Leinster hit the front early through Dan Sheehan. It was very quickly, almost immediately equalised by George Horn. But from then, 30 unanswered points put Leinster into an unassailable position. And you have to say, they looked like their old selves again, like the team that was chasing a European crown just 7 weeks ago and came up short, agonisingly so, against Northampton Saints. And they lost their sparkle for a few weeks. But they've got over that hump, and they showed their true selves, their best selves this afternoon. Sheehan with a double. Osborne followed him. Clarkson and Tommy O'Brien also crossed the line. Outstanding performances from 1 to 23, really, where they outplayed their opposition. And in the end, it's title defence from Glasgow that comes to an end in a Dublin downpour. Well, the full-time score here at the Aviva Stadium: Leinster 37, Glasgow Warriors 19.
Thank you, Rory. Well, we are pitchside underneath the deluge. The heavens have opened. I don't know if that's symbolic, perhaps, John, of Glasgow's match here today. They came here with high hopes after the quarter-final victory over the Stormers, but it wasn't quite 52-0, but it was almost as one-sided as that.
Yeah, it wasn't 52-0. Leinster could have scored 52 points if we're honest about it. I just think Leinster outsmarted them, far more physical. Their kicking game was, vastly superior to Glasgow's, almost across every facet of play. Leinster dominated today, and Glasgow will be disappointed, but too many simple parts of the game. And by the simple parts, I mean kicking game. You've got to be able to kick well against the team. You've got to get over the gain line, and their kicking game wasn't good enough today, and Leinster just dominated.
The amount of red zone entries Leinster had compared to Glasgow is huge. They had, I think, 21 red zone entries to Glasgow's 7, and 5 of those 7 came in the last 15 minutes for Glasgow, so that tells you where the game was won. I think Leinster were incredible today, far better than I've seen, especially in knockout rugby over the last few years where they've struggled. They were clinical, they were powerful, and play the conditions so much better.
Yep, they definitely answered their critics today, did Leinster. A superlative performance from them. I think we might be able to hear now from the man of the match. Oh, we don't have him yet. We'll continue our chat. Stevie, you said at the beginning of the show that Leinster needed to come out and make a statement today. They did that, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. They also did that last week against the Scarlets in the opening 15 minutes, but they couldn't kick on, and there was a bit of a halt by the Scarlets. They played the referee really well today. The majority of the decisions, the penalties, they never got pushed back at scrum time or line-out time, and their line-outs maybe been their Achilles' heels at times this season, but very accurate, and they missed, many kicks at goal, penalty that come off the post by Prendergast as well. It was all one way, Leinster today, and really disappointed because there's a number of Glasgow fans that turned up today expecting a result from them, but they didn't pitch up. They'll move on to next season. And the reality is, over the last maybe couple of months, they've shown frailties to their game, and this week was just one step too far.
There's a Glasgow fan right next to you, and you're right there, Stevie.
Yeah, heartbroken again now, lads.
In all seriousness, Simon, you know, there's been a lot of chat about Leinster and whether they've got the killer instinct, whether they've lost the ability to get over the line when it really matters. You know, we've seen them put teams to the sword in the regular season. We've seen them put teams to the sword that are inferior to them, but when they come against opposition that are expected to be competitive, sometimes they go within themselves, they go into their shells. That didn't happen today.
Well done, mate. Well played.
How bad is it?
Well played, Ross. How are you?
Welcome, Jamison. Come under the umbrellas.
Yes.
You've got the right outfit there for the rain, that's for sure. Congratulations. We were just talking about the fact that, you know, coming into this, a lot of questions being asked about Leinster. Can they do it when it really matters in the knockout stages? That was a good Glasgow side you came up against today, and you really put them to the sword.
Yeah, I suppose it was an ideal opponent for us in the semi-finals. We have a bit of history with Glasgow, obviously. We've had some ding-dong battles against them over the years, so there certainly wasn't going to be any complacency roll into a semi-final, and the lads fronted, to be fair, and I think it was a solid performance, all things considered.
It was pretty much a complete performance. Was there any particular elements that pleased you the most today?
I suppose the physicality, you have to front up, knockout rugby at times can be simple, it can be a simple game, and you have to front up physically, so obviously that's not my thing, leave it up to the big boys, but the boys are unreal today, so solid set piece and all that kind of thing is big for knockout rugby, so I think the lads fronted pretty well.
You're right, though, there was a fair bit of niggle there at times, and some of you guys are going to be Lions teammates in a matter of weeks, so you'll put that behind you, presumably.
Yeah, 100%. We already spent a bit of time with the Glasgow fellas. We travelled over for the last camp there on our flight, so they're all great fellas, but when you cross the white line it's a little bit different, so but yeah, we're happy all things considered.
You spoke about the kicking game for Leinster and how good the kicking game was. Was that something you spoke about in the week, about maybe kicking more?
Yeah, probably, and obviously the conditions played a part in that a little bit as well. So it's going to be, like I touched on, knockout rugby at times can be a simple game, and executing a strong kick game is part of that as well. So I think we're pretty happy with how things went there today.
And in terms of the final, Jamison, I presume you're all going to sit down now with a beverage or two and watch the game over in Pretoria. Any preference who you play against?
No, man. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah, like I say, we'll sit down and enjoy it together, and whoever it is, we'll prepare accordingly. So we look forward to sitting down and watching that.
Well, one thing you can guarantee, they will be South African. It's a South African derby after all. Thanks for coming over. Congratulations, and enjoy the night.
Cheers, boys. Thanks very much.
Appreciate it. We can now hear from the player of the match. There were many contenders, but the award ultimately went to Ryan Baird.
Yes, Ryan Baird is standing by with me. Dara de Burke is here to do the honours and present Ryan with his Player of the Match award.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Good job, Dara. Well done. And good job, Ryan Baird. Congratulations. What a time to pull out a performance like that in a semi-final.
Look, we've played them twice before, as I alluded to in the press earlier in the week, and we couldn't take it for granted. They were champions last year, and we want to win this tournament, so they had to come to our home patch and try to get through us, and we got the right side of the result.
Half a dozen tries, some brilliant scores, a real variety about your play, but I'm sure when all is said and done, the hard work, the aggression, the energy might be as pleasing as anything.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the physical nature of someone is going to open up the door to unlock everything. So we prided ourselves on today was how physical we could be, because we know Glasgow are a great team. A lot of Lions in that team. So we were, we knew if we brought the physicality to the game, we'd unlock it.
Where did that performance come from this week mentally? What was the talk in camp? Because there was a lot of pressure outside.
Was there? I wouldn't know. I don't watch the media. Again, as I said, we want to win this tournament. You got to show up. If you don't show up, you lose and you're out. So it was as simple as that. Like I was telling myself this morning, I don't have a decision to make today. I have to turn up. We needed to win.
You certainly did that. Congratulations. Best of luck next week in the final.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Cheers.
So Leinster are in the final after 3 consecutive seasons where they got knocked out at the semi-final stage. They've crossed that extra hurdle, got themselves into the grand final. We'll analyse exactly how they did it after this quick break. Welcome back. If you are just joining us, well, you've missed a Leinster demolition job. 37-12, the final score in this first URC semi-final. Leinster into the final for the first time in 4 seasons. And Simon Zebo, on the basis of what we've seen today, that is thoroughly deserved.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. I thought there was 3 areas probably in particular where they stood out for me. Was the kicking game, their short side attack with Jamison Gibson Park, as we saw there for Osborne's try, was brilliant. And they were at that all day, and then when their entries into the 22, when they got there, they just punished them, kept the scoreboard ticking over or took their chances and came away with tries. So the way more effective team. Knockout rugby, you just have to adjust your tactics a bit, and they were the better side today.
We did wonder, Stevie, at half-time whether Franco Smith could deliver some sort of magic in the Glasgow changing room, and maybe Glasgow would come out of sight transformed. But as it was at the start of the first half, it was Leinster who started strongly again.
Yeah, it was, and you take out that first Glasgow try, it wasn't until the 76th minute that they get in behind them again, but they're just so good at coming down the short side, a little banging the door constantly. Gibson Park, the ball's there, nobody's challenged for it for Glasgow. Big bodies all over the place, and a lot of patience as well. You know, it's very easy there to knock the ball on at the bottom of the rock, or one of the forwards to maybe get a little bit greedy and want to take it on himself. But you know, nice width there by Jamie Osborne, and one pass there, JB beats what, six defenders?
Yeah, but I think that's the impact of just physical domination. You see, you could throw a blanket on the whole Glasgow side. It was right in front of us just here, and there's maybe 30 yards spreading the whole Glasgow defence. You get narrower and narrower because all the threats around the ball. It's around Gibson Park. Big ball carrier. Sheehan carried the ball really well in that sequence. And then, yeah, the passing ability and the vision of Jamison Gibson Park to just find the space, and it's another walk-in.
And we hold Leinster to a very high standard, and at the start of the show we were wondering maybe we've been a bit too harsh on them because, you know, they haven't won a trophy in 4 years, but
4 years.
No laughing. Today they ticked all those boxes, answered all those questions. We saw a champion side out there today.
Yeah, and I questioned their buzz last week, and I think it's a rivalry that brings out the best in you. You could sense the tension around this game beforehand, the nervousness of the players, and that's what brings out the best in you. And Glasgow, full credit to them, made Leinster bring out their best game, and we saw that. Zeeb's touched on it there. It's the physicality that Leinster brought today, the patience that they showed in the attack. You look at that try there that Osborne goes over. The foundation of that is dominating Leinster or Glasgow physically with the forward pack, and then with how the backs, I think, supported the Leinster forwards. Osborne's carrying, Barrett's carrying, the likes of Tommy O'Brien coming in. They just kept the pressure on Glasgow for that middle part of the game, and they weren't able to get back into it.
And if there was any hope among the travelling Glasgow support that they were going to get back into it, that door was slammed firmly shut when Kieran Frawley went over about the 60-minute mark.
Yeah, it was. Glasgow had to score early coming out in that second half, and they couldn't. Look, Leinster's gain line efficiency was huge today. You know, way better than Glasgow's. Their breaks they made was far greater as well than Glasgow. They're making a lot of line breaks, and you know, this was just good play. This was Sam Prendergast. I like him when he comes around that corner like that, and he's looking for runners. But good tackle there. But just look at the support from the Leinster players.
Yeah, Shanks, like we spoke about it before the game. Leinster's success in the red zone, it was 50% throughout the season, then they get to the semi-final and it drops down to 25%. They needed to find an extra gear today, and we saw that. Their ability to keep the ball alive, not allow the Glasgow defence get set, and that paid off dividends, and that's how they racked up such a score.
As much as Leinster were brilliant in all facets today, John, Glasgow didn't help themselves. We saw a stuttering performance from the Warriors in sharp contrast to what we saw against the Stormers last week.
Yeah, but that's what happens when a team applies pressure throughout the game, and you know, we've touched on it a number of times. The kicking game, you know, the breakdown, the physicality. Glasgow were just absorbing pressure all day, and what happens is you can't get into your game. We saw, you know, you're out on your feet, you can't find attacking shape, you're trying things which aren't on. So yeah, Glasgow, I think, will be really frustrated with how they performed, how they weren't able to apply their own version of that pressure. But they made so many mistakes. We said it at half-time, every try in that first half came from a Glasgow mistake.
When you can't find attacking shape, you have to rely on the power and the size, and they just don't have the strength and depth. So that's where your Fergusons and your Dempseys come into it, that can just carry, you know, with no space, get you on the front foot. They just don't have that power. They couldn't match that power. And when things don't go right in attack, you rely on that power to try and get you out of trouble, and they couldn't.
And not once today were Leinster under any pressure to get out They were just at ease. The ball was at Gibson Park's feet, just nail it 50 yards up the pitch, never under any pressure. You flip it over, Glasgow were always under pressure, couldn't get out, their exits weren't great, and the kicking game.
And look who comes off the bench as well then.
Yeah.
You've got Snyman, you've got
big
Kelleher.
impact.
Massive impacts, big carriers.
Absolutely. Well, let's hear from Franco Smith now. He's battled hard all season. He's taken this Glasgow team to heights they've not experienced for a while, but ultimately he was on the wrong end of a bad result today.
Franco, commiserations. The result has gone against you today. You came up against a Leinster side who've produced a huge performance. What's your overall takeaway?
I think you summed it up there. A huge performance from them. From the word go, first turnover, we can feel. I felt the urgency that they've had there. Yeah, look, on the day, not good enough, especially in the first half. I thought we should have started better. That way we shouldn't have. Then we wouldn't have chased the scoreline like we did in the second part of the game, and that unfortunately led to more errors from our side. So first 20-25 minutes, I think they did a good job on us. We made about 100 tackles in the first quarter of the game. So yeah, it's a quality outfit. We could have been better, I think, but you know the way they went about their business and kept the pressure on in the first part of the game put us obviously on the back foot, and it was an uphill battle from there.
How much of Glasgow being on the back foot was because of the kicking game and the way they seemed to play an awful lot of the game in the air and dominated that area?
Yeah, agreed. I think they, you know, that we were really strong there last week, and you know, both these wings quality, you know, just outclassed us a little bit in the air today. And I don't think the strategy was wrong. It's the right way to play against Leinster. We just should have, we could have done the air battle better. I think they were really good at it. You know, James Lowe's world class in that department, and they proved it again today.
It's disappointing end to what's been an excellent season. Again, it's been a valiant title defence. You've just come up short one hurdle before the final.
Yeah, look, I'm really proud. You know, you must see this thing in context. We've got a lot of boys, you know, not available for selection this week. We've tried to defend this week after week for the 39 weeks that we've been involved, and with the European Cup challenge in between. So I must take a look at the big picture. Yes, it's a dream going to the final. We know that and experienced it last year, but it was a tough task to come here and play and beat Leinster. Yeah, we had to be extraordinarily good, and they had to, you know, be average for us to do this in front of a away crowd.
Franco, thanks as always for your time.
Thank you very much.
So that is Glasgow's season done and dusted. They were dumped out of the Champions Cup by Leinster. They've been dumped out of the URC by Leinster as well. Definitely their bogey team, Simon. One thing that didn't help them today, we talked about the error-strewn display, their discipline. It was an issue last week, but it didn't matter so much because the Stormers were so poor. But 16 penalties last week, another 14 today. Granted, a lot of them because of the pressure that was coming down upon them, but you can't give away that many penalties and expect to win.
No, you can't. You have no chance in a semi-final to be giving that many penalties away. But that wasn't the only part of the game where they came up short. I think they touched on the kicking battle, the area battle. They just got completely hammered there. The wingers were getting caught underneath the balls, and all the Leinster lads were attacking it with pace. They won all the scraps. It was just, you could go through loads of areas where they were just second best today. And yeah, certainly it's not good ieugh.
It was a kicking masterclass, Ian, wasn't it? They clearly came with a defined tactic to get behind Glasgow and put pressure on the receiving fielders, and ultimately it worked a treat.
Yeah, Leinster mix up their kicking game really well, whether it's going early for a contest, getting up, creating breaking ball, going really long and backing their kick chase, and then even we saw the subtleties, the little chip kicks. And what that means is, as a defensive team, you've got to consistently get into position. So getting up, winning the aerial battle there, and then it's breaking ball, you're attacking against an unstructured defence. Even here, they're like Leinster are 25 metres out from the Glasgow try line, but they still want to apply that field pressure. This ends up in a scrum to Leinster in a prime attacking opportunity in the middle of the field, which they ultimately go on and score from. So it was how they continuously challenged Glasgow early. And for me, what really impressed me with this Leinster defence, look at the amount of bodies around that breaking ball. The desperation was back in Leinster today that we didn't necessarily see against Saints or even last week against the Scarlets.
And I think if you're looking at Glasgow's evolution, and we said at halftime, I think that they're the team that kicks the least in the league, fewest number of times and meters. I think if you're a Glasgow team, the one thing you take away from this game, apart from the physical domination, is we have to have a better kicking game. We have to have a plan B which we can execute. And the kicking game, whether you like it or not, it's not the sexiest part of rugby. But you saw today, in different conditions, that is such an important weapon to have.
It's not just kicking game, it's more kickers.
Yeah.
You know, because they struggled. There was only one or two real definite kickers. But you look at Leinster, they can all kick. They can all get themselves out of trouble. You saw it there. Tommy O'Brien kicking, Jimmy O'Brien kicking, Prendergast. They all do it.
But we were here, weren't we? And exit, and you get into just outside your 22 from a restart. More pressure comes on you.
Yeah.
And Leinster, conversely, restart, Jameson, Gibson Park, whoever it might be, James Lowe, up to halfway, put the pressure back on the opposition
It takes
team.
your soul away as a backfield.
Completely, yeah.
When you keep knocking the ball on and Leinster keep winning the scraps, it literally takes your soul away. Your head drops, you lose all your confidence. And yeah, they were very clever with how they kicked. Glasgow are a very good counter-attacking side. They've plenty of pace in the back three, and we saw Leinster are susceptible to being punished counter-attacks through Scarlets, Northampton, whatever. They took those access points away from Glasgow. It was really impressive, and they peppered them in the air. And yeah, they snatched their soul today. So.
And Glasgow almost ran out of ideas in that second half, Stevie. You know, territory and possession against them, all the stats against them. And there were times when you were just crying out for them to kick the ball long and chase, but they kept playing rugby in their own half.
The thing is with Leinster, if they don't get a clean exit, they usually go really long and then they back their kick chase. And all of a sudden you have somebody like Ryan Baird who was man of them. This today was his ideal match. Just kick chase, put loads of pressure, really athletic. And there's plenty of guys in that Leinster team that are exactly like that. So yeah, I was sitting up in the stand scratching my head why Glasgow couldn't change it. You know, even in the second half with Stafford McDowell come on, shank off the left foot again, 2 minutes later, exactly the same thing happened. And you're looking in the backfield going, there's plenty of room back there, just send it long and try and get a good kick chase. But yeah, it's pretty hard to do that when you're 30 points down on the scoreboard, you know, and you're trying to get a bit of pressure or you know, some kind of foothold in the game. But yeah, disappointing by Glasgow obviously, but much happier by Leo Cullen, I'm sure.
Yes, indeed. Leo, congratulations. Thanks for coming over. We were just discussing Leinster's performance in depth. Lots to be pleased about, and I'm sure you're going to analyse the tape. But what's come up time and again is the kicking game. You went there with a clear strategy to kick a bit more today, and it seemed to work a treat.
I'm looking at all these pundits and thinking, how did they have enough airtime for all of them together?
They've all got a lot to say as well. I thought you were going to say, I'm looking at all these pundits and what do they know about kicking? But
yeah, sorry, what was the question again? What am I kicking?
Your kicking strategy was clearly something you put a lot of emphasis on today, and it worked a treat out there.
Yeah, like it's trying to manage the conditions. Bloody hell, June rugby. And yeah, listen, it was predicted different showers at different stages. So managing the game, yeah, it was going to be important. You know, like in Glasgow, I think with Hastings playing 10, we thought they would probably kick a little bit more. You know, Scarlets would have kicked a lot against us last week as well. So just trying to manage that territory battle, as you say. So listen, it was pleasing because we started the game, we kicked off, Ryan Baird, good chase, Tommy O'Brien's in the poach, kicked the corner, managed to score a try, Dan Sheehan gets over eventually after plenty of phases there. So Glasgow do well, hit back, score a really good try themselves, but we're probably quite good in terms of how we just managing the conditions. Kick a penalty where we 10-5 in front, and you know, we obviously have that try disallowed, but whether it's a forward pass, I don't know, and probably just about. But listen, I thought we showed good composure to score then straight away again. So anyway, it was good. So managed to keep our nose in front. Like, we would have this debate the whole time, you know. But the players have to get a bit of a feel for some of the decisions. Obviously, they back to go to the corner. Could have chosen to take 3 points, but whatever the decision is, they just need to make it the right decision. So thankfully, they did it on half time. If they didn't, everyone would ask the question, why didn't they kick 3 points?
Sure.
So it's just something that's just making the options the right options. So and overall, listen, there's lots of good stuff. We know Glasgow, very dangerous team. You know, a couple of good tries they scored at the end. But listen, similar to last week, it's just about getting through to the next round, isn't it?
It certainly is, and you've done that. You're in the final for the first time in 4 years now. The physicality is something that must have pleased you as well today, because that was a battle royale at times. And in the first 20 minutes, there was a bit of niggle, some real tough tackles as well, wasn't there? And we were wondering whether there might be a card or two in the game because tempers were beginning to fray. But Leinster always seemed to come out on the right side of those physical battles, whether it was at the breakdown or in the set piece.
Yeah, like I said, we watched Glasgow last week, and I suppose the thing that stood out is like how they scramble, particularly around goal line, and listen, they'll push the boundaries, you know what I mean, to stay in the game there. And so we needed to be nice and accurate there. So again, like going back to the start of the game well, probably got into our stride maybe a little bit better than Glasgow did. So, but yeah, listen, the players, they prepared well during the week. You touched on it there. Like, it's an unbelievable physical battle. So making sure that we just recover well, and obviously it's one of the South African teams has to travel now. So we have to try and make that count for us in how we go about preparing for the game. So,
Leo, sorry, just on those boys as you mentioned there coming in, there was good cohesion today, and that you sometimes don't get that when you have to make 4 or 5 changes. The likes of Scott Penny coming in, Jamie Osborne again at 13, mixing and matching a little bit. Tommy O'Brien, that must have pleased you really well for guys that come in who have probably trained well but haven't been together on the pitch as much.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Yeah, like, 'cause you go through the course of the season, you know the way it's like. It's like you're starting in September. We're in June now, so and it's the way the competition is. Some at certain stages of the year during the Six Nations, November Internationals, we're missing good chunks of players, and it creates a good competitive group. And guys need to be ready when they get the chance. Listen, you touched on Scott Penny there. Listen, I thought he was immense there today. So. And Jamie Osborne, good young player. I know he's obviously had international experience now as well. So, but yeah, listen, it's time. The guys come through, and you're never quite sure how they go in big games, knockout games. But listen, as I said, they went and prepared well this week, and thankfully, you can see some of them performing well in the big days. So, but it's just. It's like it's not getting too exciting now. Getting through now, and obviously into Croke Park now next week.
I was just going to ask you, Leo. Jack Conan last week after the game sensed, a real sense of frustration. It must be a very, very different feeling going into a final after a performance like that.
For me, not really. Like, to be honest, like, I think from a coach's point of view, you just want to get through to the next round. So, it's playoff games. What's that? We've 5 playoff games we played now across 2 competitions, so we're into a 6th. And it's on the day, So, and you'll take winning by a point. You know what I mean? Like, it's just getting through, isn't it? So, and you got to be able to adapt to conditions on the day, the referee, like all the variables that are there. So, the opposition being the main one. So, we'll watch this game with great interest now, see what comes out of that, and you know what you're going to get with either of those teams. And if it's the Wolves, Jake White will have a strong plan. He's wily coach, and if it's the Sharks, John Plumtree knows the Irish system well, coached the Irish forwards for a year, was a neighbour of mine for a little while as well. So listen, they're both teams locked and loaded with a load of Springbok internationals, and yeah, listen, it's going to be a great contest hopefully.
Well, you've teed that up beautifully, Leo, because that game is coming up very soon indeed. So we'll let you go and get comfortable to watch.
Cheers,
that.
Leo.
Cheers, bud.
Congratulations again. Thanks for coming over. Good man. We'll see you again soon. So yeah, that is semi-final 1 done. Leinster into the final. A delighted Leo Cullen. Semi-final 2 is coming up very soon, and you don't want to miss this one. A clash of the heavyweights in Pretoria. The Bulls against the Sharks. Springboks galore on both sides. We're going to take another quick break, but don't go too far. We'll be back in just a few moments.